My ex-boyfriend, Jerry, invited me to his wedding to show off his rich fiancée, but the table turned in a way I never expected. If only he knew, he would not have humiliated me. Eventually, Jerry started packing his things. On his last night in the house, I came home and was shocked to see him and Omar sitting on the couch. I stared at him, confused. He told me that since it was his last night, he wanted to show Omar where he lived. I couldn't believe his boldness. He knew I would be home, yet he brought her without asking. I didn't want to be rude to Omar since it wasn't her fault. I politely greeted her, but she looked at me with disdain and didn't say a word. I ignored her and went to freshen up. Later, while I was cooking, Omar came into the kitchen to get water. She stared at me, making me feel uncomfortable. I asked her if she needed anything. She gave me another hateful look and said nothing. I shrugged and kept cooking. After dinner, I was heading back downstairs when I overheard them talking. Omar said Jerry was lucky to have upgraded from someone like me. I froze in shock. Jerry laughed and agreed with her. She then asked why he had ever dated me. His answer broke my heart. He said he used me because I was stupid enough to pay for most of our dates and lend him money. He even admitted I had paid most of the rent, allowing him to save a lot. Tears welled in my eyes. I had suspected he took advantage of me, but hearing it confirmed was painful. They kept mocking me, and I quietly went back upstairs. I spent the night crying into my pillow. The next morning, Jerry and Omar were gone. He had moved out completely. Over the next few weeks, I enjoyed living alone. I no longer cared what Jerry and Omar had said about me. Then one day, a friend told me Jerry was getting married to Omar. I was surprised it happened so quickly. The friend showed me their engagement photos, and they looked happy. While I felt a small pang of sadness, I was mostly relieved that he was out of my life. I knew we were never meant to be together. That evening, I checked my mailbox and found a wedding invitation from Jerry and Omar. I thought it was a mistake until I saw a note scribbled inside. It said, "I want you to attend my wedding so you can see the amazing life I'll have with Omar." My hands trembled as I read it. He had invited me to humiliate me. All the hurt and anger I had buried came rushing back. I decided I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I RSVP'd yes and added a +1. I had a plan forming in my mind. I spent hours scrolling through Omar's social media. Finally, I found what I needed. Omar had broken up with her longtime boyfriend, Ebuka, just a few months ago. They had been together since high school. I sent Ebuka a friend request. When he accepted, I messaged him, explaining who I was and why I wanted to talk. To my surprise, he replied. Over the next few days, we talked about our experiences. Ebuka told me Omar had cheated on him with Jerry. He wasn't shocked when she left him for someone older. I shared how Jerry had used me and how they had mocked me. Ebuka was shocked at Jerry's behavior. After hearing everything, he agreed to be my +1 at the wedding. I was excited to see their reactions when we showed up together. On the wedding day, Jerry's face turned pale when he saw me walk in with Ebuka. He pulled me aside and whispered angrily, asking why I brought Omar's ex. I smiled sweetly and walked away without answering. He couldn't make a scene in front of the guests. When Omar walked down the aisle, she looked beautiful in her white dress. Everything seemed perfect. After the ceremony, The party moved to the reception hall. Oma hadn't noticed us yet. When she finally saw Ebuka sitting beside me, she froze. Her face went pale. She walked over and asked Ebuka what he was doing there. I smiled and told her I had invited him to support her on her special day. Oma's face turned red with anger. She asked if we were dating now. Ebuka didn't answer because the question was ridiculous. He calmly asked if they could talk privately. She nodded and threw me a dirty look before they walked off. I noticed Jerry watching the whole thing nervously. The reception continued, but Oma and Ebuka didn't return. Guests whispered, wondering where the bride had gone. After a while, one of the bridesmaids ran in holding a note. She announced that Oma had run away with her ex. The room fell silent. The bridesmaid read the note aloud. Oma wrote that seeing Ebuka reminded her of her true feelings and that she had made a mistake marrying Jerry. Gasps filled the room. Jerry stood frozen in shock, his face red with humiliation. I was also surprised. I had planned to annoy him but never thought Oma would actually run away. Jerry looked like he wanted to scream. Oma's parents apologized to the guests and asked them to leave. As I walked out, I couldn't help but feel a little satisfied. Jerry had invited me to embarrass me, but the tables had turned. Since the wedding, I have gotten mixed reactions after sharing my story online. Some people said I did the right thing, while others felt I went too far. I want to be clear, I didn't plan to ruin Jerry's wedding. I had no idea Oma and Ebuka would run away together. I only wanted to make Jerry regret inviting me to show off. I texted Ebuka after the wedding, asking what had happened. He didn't reply immediately but sent a long message the next day. Ebuka explained that during their talk at the wedding, Oma admitted she still loved him. Seeing him again brought back all her feelings. They decided to leave the wedding together. He said they took the honeymoon trip that Oma had planned with Jerry. Oma's parents were angry at first but later calmed down after she explained everything. Ebuka thanked me for inviting him, saying it gave him closure and a second chance with Oma. Meanwhile, Jerry had been calling and texting me non-stop. He sent several nasty messages blaming me for the wedding disaster. I ignored him. I knew I had nothing to do with Oma's decision. However, Jerry didn't stop. One weekend, he showed up at my doorstep, yelling for me to open the door. At first, I told him to leave, but he refused. I finally opened the door a little and told him he wasn't allowed inside. Jerry started yelling, saying I had ruined his life. He told me he had already quit his job, thinking he wouldn't need to work after marrying Oma. He asked why I had brought Ebuka to the wedding. I was tired of his blame game, so I told him the truth. I had overheard everything he and Oma said about me before he moved out. His eyes widened in shock. I reminded him how he had used me for years and disrespected me. I also told him that I had stayed quiet even when he cheated on me with Oma. I said the only reason I brought Ebuka was that Jerry had invited me to humiliate me. He yelled that I was naive and that it wasn't his fault. I couldn't see how he was using me. He kept blaming me, saying I had ruined his perfect plan with Oma. I told him to leave immediately or I would call the police. He sneered, saying I wouldn't dare, but when I pulled out my phone, he backed off and walked away. I slammed the door and promised myself I would never see him again. Since then, I blocked Jerry on all platforms. I also told my family about the incident and installed a security camera at my door in case he returned. Many people have asked if I met Ebuka again. Yes, I did. About a week ago, he invited me to lunch, saying he wanted to talk. When I arrived, I was surprised to see Oma sitting next to him. I braced myself, thinking she might confront me, but she smiled and greeted me warmly. Oma apologized for how she had treated me. She explained that Jerry had been very manipulative. At work, he gave her lots of attention and complained about me, saying he was unhappy in our relationship. He made her feel special, and during a rough patch with Ebuka, she got carried away and had an affair with Jerry. Afterward, Jerry convinced her to break up with Ebuka. He kept telling her they were perfect for each other. Oma admitted she felt guilty but thought she could be happy with Jerry. She said she became insecure when she saw me at the wedding. She felt jealous of how independent I was and regretted how she had treated me. Oma sincerely apologized for her behavior. I told her how hard I had worked to build my career and explained that I never needed anyone's approval. She nodded and looked ashamed. Ebuka confirmed that during their private talk at the wedding, they both realized they still loved each other. That's why they ran away. Since then, they had been happy and were working on their relationship. Oma said her parents were upset at first but eventually accepted the situation. She also told me she would be filing for an annulment soon. Hearing this gave me a sense of closure. I could see how happy they were, and while I didn't fully agree with their actions, I felt relieved that they were at peace. We had a nice lunch, talked some more, and then said goodbye. I haven't spoken to either of them since and have no interest in being part of their drama. As for Jerry, I have no idea what he's doing now. I hope he learns from his mistakes and stops chasing after rich partners. I, on the other hand, am focused on myself and my career. This chapter of my life is finally closed. Thank you all for listening to my story. Did I do the right thing, or should I have just ignored Jerry's wedding invitation? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section.